On today's show, we're asking a simple question. Is the Cavs half-court offense a problem? We'll discuss that and Cavs Wolves on a new episode of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use our code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. I'm Chris Manning. Filling in for Evan Damerald today is Fear the Sword and Write Down Euclid contributor extraordinaire, my friend and yours, Jackson Flickinger. Find him on Twitter at Jax. Sure. Jake Stevens, as always. On production, Cavs Wolves, Jackson, was certainly a basketball game that we all watched. Certainly was, I think, to start here, not a good Cavs performance. 91 points, 7 of 29 from 3. Darius Garland, 8 of 21 and 0 of 6 from the field on a 19-4 night for him. Obviously, Cleveland super injured. No Towns for Minnesota on top of that, but a pretty grimy game that favored the Wolves ultimately, and the Cavs, despite leading at the half, ultimately weren't going to get this one done.
Yeah, well, when you score 42 points in the second half, that's usually not the recipe for success, including 17 points in the third quarter. So it's like,
that third quarter,
you gotta score points to win the game. And like the Cavs just don't have a whole lot of options to do that. And there are reasons why the Cavs are like that. They are shorthanded. Darius Garland has not been himself this year and probably won't be himself after, losing the weight that he did because of his jaw injury. But if we're going to talk about what's wrong with this team, it's like the guard play. They're not able to get to the basket. And if you can't get to the basket, you're probably not going to be a good offense. And that's kind of what we've seen since Donovan's been injured.
Yeah, I think particularly against this Wolves team that is a great defensive team, can play the style, has a bunch of big wings and smart players, and has Mike Conley, even though he's older, and being really smart at the point of attack. They're going to defend you and make you have to beat them by scoring in the half court and getting inside and making tough shots and making some threes. The third quarter, Jackson, I think in particular, illustrates just how tough this was, and I think a lot of what went wrong. So Garland in that quarter is 1 of 5 from the field. Takes the most shots of anyone in that quarter. He's 0 of 2 from 3. 2 assists, 2 turnovers. I will give him credit in this, I think, way that I think is generally being fair to him. He was not shy about shooting when they just needed someone to shoot and be aggressive. Like, they needed someone other than Karis LeVert to take shots. Share down, like, he's not going to self-create. Niang, not a self-creator. Like, the only two guys on this team right now that you would feel comfortable with creating their own shots or really attacking and creating for others are Darius Garland and Karis LeVert. Garland, in the about 10 minutes he played, at least did that. There was something there. But it was the lift for him, the effort level required just to get off looks against this Wolves defense, and just where I think he is at right now, it was just way too hard. And that quarter, we'll get into this kind of big picture segment too about like what this half court offense is and how concerned you should be about it if you're a fan. But I look at this quarter and it's like this. Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, but this is like you could look at this two ways. I think you could just say, hey, this is like where you need Donovan Mitchell and like he solves some of your problems. But I think it also tells you what this roster is right now. And even if you added in Max Strus, you added in Evan Mobley in certain instances, and you were healthy, and you added everyone but Mitchell, I think it would be easier, but I still think it would be hard. And there are solutions you could draw up tactically. There are roster changes you could make long term. But right now, and in this quarter, and what goes on with this team, the lift on the half court against good defenses like the Wolves is just extremely high.
I feel like we say this a decent amount, is the Cavs just have a bunch of specialists on their team. They don't have a lot of guys who can pass, dribble, and shoot. So like if you have guys like Isaac Okoro, who have been very complimentary of this year, my guy, but he's not
always have been just a huge fan, Yeah.
But you have guys like Isaac Okoro, George Niang, Sam Merrill. These guys aren't creating their own shots. You throw in Jared Allen, he's not creating his own shot. Tristan Thompson, Marcus Morris, like these aren't at this point in their careers. These guys are all specialists that need to be set up in order to be successful offensively. And when you pair that with Garland and LeVert, who are right now not playing like the lead engines of good offenses, it's just going to be really hard to do anything. Like, there's a reason why the offense was so good with Donovan Mitchell, because his ability to get to the paint, his ability to move the ball, to see the open pass and make the easy passes really optimizes everybody in a way that Darius Garland right now isn't. And they don't really have a counter, because what else are you going to do? Say, Isaac Okoro, please generate some offense. Just dump it into post to Jared Allen. Like, that's not his game. So you're just really left with a team that's pretty mediocre, and mediocre teams need things to go right if they're going to beat good opponents like the Timberwolves. And things didn't go right. The Cavs weren't hitting threes, and this is what happens when you get that formula.
Yeah, and that's even with Caris LeVert. Like, I think to his credit, not just this game, but other games, like making reads a little bit quicker and trying to play into the role they need him to play. It's just like not enough. Jackson, as a thought exercise, if you just swapped out Niang for Kyle Anderson, do you think that would change anything for you? Like, would you feel a different type of way if you just took one role guy in for another role guy, but a role guy who, lesser of a shooter, but playmakes, does some other stuff? Would that make you feel any different if you had a different kind of guy kind of slotted into that salary spot, those minutes?
I mean, I would feel better about those minutes, but with this current team, I think the gap between what they need and what they currently have is more than just a Kyle Anderson solving this. If this was, if this was like a Donovan Mitchell led team instead of Darius Garland in there right now, and they were still losing games, I'd say, yeah, if you tweak it around the edge, I think we can optimize this just a little bit better. But, and this really, I'm not trying to just take like shots at Darius, because we've seen him be a very high level player before. It just, I don't think we're going to see that this year with all that he's been through. And then him coming back, having to just carry the entire offense essentially since the All-Star break is just really not fair to him. And it's just not putting him in a position to be the most successful version of himself. So that's where I think this team is really kind of having its issues. And there's nobody besides Garland to carry that load. LeVert, but you know what I mean. Like, there's just not a whole lot of options out there.
Yeah, I think this team, you can feel it right now, is just, I think even what we say, Jackson, I think about this team and can write about this team, frankly, is just like, yeah, this team was built for Donovan Mitchell. He's not healthy. We're kind of just waiting for him to come back and maybe have his knee functioning again for any of this to make sense, which is, that's not fun to talk about. But I think for us to be kind of grounded and also just realize that this is March in the NBA, I think kind of is part of the problem. It's like March in the NBA often kind of stinks, and this is why, because you star players get banged up, and here you are.
And especially if you're the Cavs, this is the third year in a row that this has happened. It feels like this felt like a game from 2021 where the Cavs were in their like honeymoon season and all ball handlers died, and Darius Garland was just out there on an island with Evan Mobley trying to like create stuff with Rajon Rondo playing minutes with him. So it's not to that level, but it's like, this is like when you don't have ball handlers, you don't have people who can put pressure on a defense, you can't generate 3-point shots, because it's like, what was it, like 29 threes today, which you want them to shoot more threes, but it's you can't it's just really hard to generate 3-point shots. Like the shots that they did take, I don't think that they were probably even necessarily good 3-point shots. There was a couple Marcus Morris ones where he was falling out of bounds that he actually hit one of them, but it's just hard to make a functional team like this. And I think where we see this most is like Isaac Okoro, who is somebody who is a derivative player. And when there's nobody attacking the basket, forcing defenses to shift their focus off of him, he just really hasn't been an offensive factor in any way that he was, say, from December through the beginning of February.
Yeah, particularly when you can't just rejigger an offense and like run a bunch of new stuff. Like that capacity doesn't exist in the NBA. So you're kind of stuck with what we have, and this is what the Cavs are right now. After this, we'll get in. We have half court offense. Is it an issue? Is this an issue about where the Cavs are going, what they are, particularly against elite defenses and against playoff caliber teams? We're going to debate that topic up next, and then segment 3, would you rather be the Cavs or the Timberwolves going forward? That's all coming up on Locked On Cavs. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. It is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. Just you against the numbers. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. So you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Some examples of picks you could have in Prize Picks are Luka Doncic for more than 32 points, LeBron James for more than 7 assists, Durant for more than 28 points, and so on. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA and use code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that. So, Jackson, I'm going to give you a number here about the Cavs half-court offense. Not going to give you just the full like nerd number, but just a placement. Cavs this year are 18th in half-court offense in terms of efficiency, and half-court offensive efficiency would be the clean way to say that. That is coming into Friday's game. I suspect the number will be a little bit lower after the performance against the Wolves. If you look at Cleaning the Glass, where you pull that stat from, the 2 teams that I would view as like good playoff teams in the East, or at least scary playoff teams, or in however you want to define it, it's like I'm taking the Wolves out of this, or excuse me, the Bulls out of this. In either conference that is lower than the Cavs right now, so East or West, are the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic. Not good. That does not put the Cavs in good category if you're kind of building up where this is going and what they are. They clearly just aren't up to the level that some of these other teams are in the half court. By comparison, like the Bucks are 5th, the Knicks are 12th. Cleveland is in category with teams like Chicago and Houston and Orlando and Brooklyn and Miami and Toronto, and Minnesota's even better than them. This to me, Jackson, is, aside from health, I think what the Cavs are going to look like in the half court, which is what they kind of based their all offseason about, which is making the offense more functional. It's what they said verbatim at Media Day, basically. This concerns me if I'm them, 100%.
Yeah, well, it should. And I think it's really tough because I think we've seen stretches where the half-court offense has been good. So you are what your average is, because that's literally the average. But
yeah,
I feel
I wish I could see the stat with like Donovan Mitchell on the court. Is like basically the thing.
Because like Donovan Mitchell has, like last time I checked, he's in like the 97th percentile in like on-off differentials with everything, and a lot of that has to do with the offense. Where when he's not on the court, this is the very mediocre team. I think we've seen that since March 1st. They're 5-7 and have the 21st ranked offense. So it's like, yeah, that I'm kind of surprised it's 21st. Is probably that like Pelicans game that's really giving him a little bit more of a boost than what they actually deserve it. Donovan was playing in that game, so that's make it that what you will.
But and even that, it's like he didn't even play well. Is the thing? It's like he wasn't good in that. He was bad.
No. But still, it's just kind of like when you were like talking about the teams that are good half-court offense teams. Those have teams with multiple guys who can put pressure on the rim, especially guys from the perimeter. Like you're talking about the Bucks, they're fifth in half-court offense. Well, you have Giannis and Dame, two guys who can put pressure on the rim. That's going to equal a good offense. When you look at the Cavs, I think one of the issues that we've seen the Cavs have in the past when they're fully healthy is it's hard to get pressure on the rim when everyone's already standing at the rim. It's the two big lineups. But then we saw from December through the beginning of February that they can get pressure on the rim if you just space out the floor and have Donovan just kind of, work with three shooters and a big. So it's like, I guess my concern level is if you told me that this is the team that's going to be having to scrap together a playoff offense, I would say it would be great if they got out of the 80s. Like I think you'd call that a win. But, if you say, hey, Donovan Mitchell's going to be playing and they have a full cast of players, I think I'm much less concerned. And I'm probably higher on Donovan than I think most people are. So I kind of trust him to figure it out if you give him the tools to figure it out. And I think JB will be much more willing to do that this year. In the couple of games that we saw Donovan play when the team was fully healthy for like that brief stretch there with when you had Allen and Mobley, JB was very aggressive about just having one of them out there at a time. Like he was not closing games with Mobley, even though he was available and was, so I think that we're not going to see a lot of situations in the playoffs where they're going to be running two bigs and Mitchell and Garland, at least not in the crunch time. So I'm not super concerned if they're healthy, but, today, the next couple games, you should be very concerned.
I just want to correct one thing that I said. So the teams that are actually worse than them, there's brain farted. Orlando is worse than them, and the Knicks are about even with the Cavs. The Cavs and Knicks coming into Friday's game were within like 0.2 of each other per 100 possessions in half court. Miami is better than Cleveland in this. Minnesota's better than this. The top 10, like in Boston, obviously, just like in Oklahoma City, like shellacking the rest of the league in half-court offense. Cleveland and the Knicks are both kind of a slog in this. The weirdest part, Jackson, if you look at last year, as like a point of comparison, the Cavs were 10th in offensive efficiency in the half-court. They ran a ton of their plays in the half-court, and the offense worked. This year, they're running slightly fewer plays, like a percentage less, point less. They're less efficient. There's not like demonstrable differences in terms of like offensive rebounding rate or anything like that. But it's like a full point worse. It's just how it's like kind of, it's like 2 points worse per 100, like how this is kind of broken over the course of the year. It doesn't always feel like that number is like in line with what we're seeing at their peak, to your point, but I think if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about this, and the Cavs play Indiana in round 1 or Miami in round 1 or New York again in round 1. My confidence level, to your points, I think is basically how good does Donovan Mitchell's knee feel?
Yes.
And that's what I'm going to feel about their half court. Like if his knee's a 8 out of 10, I'll feel like a 7 out of 10 about their half court. If it's a 6 out of 10 and he has no, if it's a 6 out of 10 and his burst is inconsistent, then it's like, okay, we're looking at a 4. Like it's all based on Donovan, it feels like.
Yeah, and I kind of think that the last year's half-court offense was kind of juiced a little bit more than, like, it was higher than I think it kind of should have been. I think like last year in the half-court, they just ran a ton of high pick and rolls, and teams weren't like aggressively collapsing the paint in the same way that they have this season after seeing the Cavs, melt down against the Knicks because of, trapping the guards and things like that. So I kind of think that, and this is kind of what I think about like the core 4 numbers from last year too, like their net rating. I think that's kind of almost like fool's gold, just because it's I don't think it's reflective of what they showed in the playoffs and how teams have adjusted to them. So, I feel like now I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I'm saying that I am kind of concerned.
I think I think where we're at in this is like it's a little bit of column A, it's a little bit of column B, right? Like there's reason I think to just be like, this is what this team has always been. Why are you worried about it? And I think on the other side of it, it's like, okay, but does this mean this team is actually not that good because they can't score in the half court consistently unless one guy is healthy and rocking? Like it's because it's not even like the Mitchell Jazz teams, Jackson, where it's like, even when that kind of melted down, it was like, and they had all those specialists, it was like, you kind of knew exactly what was going to work and what wasn't. And here it's just like, okay, like what actually works sometimes? And some of that, I mean, it's the Garland injury, but it's also like, whatever was going to happen with Mobley, I think it kind of feels like that has also been like stuffed into a locker for the rest of the year because he got hurt. And it's like anything that was burgeoning for him, and I think there was stuff kind of coming. The shooting numbers post, like just in terms of like willingness to shoot, was like a big deal. That's now just like, okay, like I don't know what to make of that this year. It's going to be an incredibly small sample for him the whole year. It's a weird place to be. It's a very, very weird place to be.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Darius, because when he came into training camp with more weight. And the first month and a half of the season, he played terrible because he decided to turn it over every other possession for some reason. But
yeah,
he had his highest percentage of finishing at the rim he's ever had in his career, and was really comfortable taking it to the paint and kind of absorbing contact in a way that he hadn't at any other point in his career. I think of that game against the Sixers where he kept like driving in the paint at Embiid. You're like, this guy is like, this is the next step for him. And then when when he broke his jaw and lost 12 pounds, like all that progress was gone. So it's like, that's where it's like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, should the Cavs be better when they don't have their best player? And it's like, yeah, they should on paper. If you said, yeah, you still have a max caliber guard, you still have an all-star center, like, yeah, you should be better. But like these circumstances kind of make it really hard to really fault them, because it's like, it's just hasn't been their year in terms of injury luck. And, sometimes that's the NBA.
Like the NBA will make you what you are, ultimately, I think is part of the lesson. All right, after this, we're going to end on something a little more lighthearted, a little less serious, a little less kind of grounded in this moment. Would you rather be the Cavs or the Wolves going forward? That's up for debate after this. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors is such a great tool. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof rafts, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Jackson, just to ask it point blank, would you rather be the Cavs or the Wolves going forward?
Cavs. I don't think it's really that close, but I know that you're a huge Wolves fan. So I don't know, every game that I see the Wolves play, it is. I mean, this is like this is your stepping stone to Locked On Wolves. So I really,
yeah.
If you put me on your reference, put me on your application, I'll give you a good reference.
Because I'm just like, I mean, look, I'm not out here defending the Rudy Gobert trade. My co-host of the Just Basketball show, Brendan Clean, is like a defender of the Gobert trade at this point. I'm like, Brendan, who hurt your soul? Like, you make me feel like I'm well adjusted. So I will say this about my affinity for the Wolves. It's not even so much like a this team thing. I don't know if you had this when you were a kid, Jackson, but there's always like other teams or players you kind of end up liking and holding a soft spot in your heart for forever. At least I do. when I was a kid, my favorite non-LeBron NBA player was Kevin Garnett. I absolutely love that guy, which probably doesn't, like, in some ways probably isn't very surprising considering I'm a little nuts sometimes. I love the Wolves, and like I also just like small market cold weather city team that's in the other conference is just like that's catnip. That's catnip for me personally. This question to me is interesting because you could look at it a couple different ways. If you're gonna tell me like who's the guy you want for the next like 6 years as your star player to like bank your next 6 years to, I think Ant is likely the pick just because he's a little bit younger than Donovan, and he's like Donovan's going to be 33 in 6 years, and like Ant will not even be 30 yet. So there's just like that where it's like you have a longer runway. The reason almost not to pick them is a very boring.
But Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley exists. Look, have you forgot about him?
Mobley's got to prove some stuff. We're kind of in like prove it zone with Mobley at this point. Like we just are. And he's about to, and he's going to get paid. And like there's a lot going on here. But yeah. The reason to not pick the Wolves is that their cap situation is absolutely insane, and the Cavs cap situation is going to get very expensive. It already is a lot of money, but it's going to be unavoidably expensive going forward with Evan Mobley's rookie scale and Garland's contract, and if Mitchell re-ups, and what do you do with Jared Allen, who's extension eligible, and all of this stuff. It's going to be pricey.
Probably
the Wolves
trading
is
him.
like, yeah, the Wolves is like at the doorstep of like absolute. I don't know how we pay for this territory.
I think kind of what, I mean, I'm not as big on Anthony Edwards as everyone else. I'm just gonna say that I don't see him as the guy that everyone else does. And I think
what if he shaved his head and just was like a bald shooting guard? Would that change your mind at all? Like he just kind of levels it up.
No, bald shooting guards are kind of like, I see him going in that trajectory, and that's like my least favorite type of player.
So you hate Michael Jordan. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And anybody else who comes to your mind that fits that description. But so like I don't know. I like obviously you'd rather have Anthony Edwards than Donovan Mitchell going forward just because of the longevity. You know, like he's a younger player, he's going to keep getting better. But I think Donovan Mitchell's a better player now when he's fully healthy. Yeah. That's not a take that other people believe. Also, the Ricky Rubio jersey makes so much more sense now that I put it all together. That you're a Timberwolves fan.
Up. But yeah, people, it's off screen right now in this, but yeah, look, it's also just like that guy. That guy's one of the most like fun players I've ever watched, and like the mental health stuff, and that jersey was really cheap.
And he's a Timberwolves fan, and he's a Timberwolves legend.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think kind of they both have similar issues with, I think they're eventually going to have to move on from Cat, and I think the Cavs are eventually going to have to move on from one of their bigs, and obviously if the Cavs did have to move on from one of their bigs, you're going to move on from Jared Allen, even though he's better right now. So I think like I think there's some similarities there. You'd probably say the Timberwolves I already said the Cavs, but maybe you'd say the Timberwolves if you didn't feel confident about Donovan Mitchell going forward. But if you feel confident about Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley together for the next 5 years, I think you can build something around them that makes more sense. And I think like this is the worst version of Darius Garland that we've seen since 2021. I don't think we're going to keep seeing this. And there's still, there's still the third seed in the East. I know they're going to fall probably by the time the playoffs come. I think it's more likely they'll be the fifth seed, but it's still, they have an incredible floor that I think we shouldn't be underselling just because they're playing so bad right now.
You think the Cavs are going to be fifth? That's where you have them going right now? This is like bearing the lead. It's just like the
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the way the numbers have like run is just like all the projections just have them like you're probably the third seed is like where this ends up. Now, the weird part about that is like it just feels it shifts a little bit between Miami and Indiana, but it's like there's very different outcomes for you there. But like the most likely outcome in terms of like the models is Cavs at 3.
Yeah, and I mean but the Cavs have they're on the road. They have no back-to-back home games, so like the last 2 games of the season.
Yeah. Hornets, though. Hornets. They get the Hornets like it feels like 9 times between now and the end of the season.
Yeah,
which is
but
real dub.
but one of them is like the last game. The last game doesn't count. Everyone knows that. Like if you're counting on the last game, you're not gonna get it.
81 game season against Poku and in the G League. Sure.
Well, you think that like, was it 2 years ago they played the Bucks on the last game? They needed to win to get like the 8th seed instead of the 9th seed or something like that, and the Bucks played like
no one,
the Nasses the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like game 82 is mostly meaningless. So like you'd rather play the Hornets now and play like a good team for game 82 because
get like Boston last day of the regular season.
That's
like
the team you want.
Yeah,
that's the team you want. But all that to say, like, yeah, they're probably falling. I mean, they have a tough schedule, and Donovan's like, from the sound of it, like from what Wendy was saying today on his podcast, doesn't seem like Donovan's coming back like next week. So and Max Strus has been out forever, and JB keeps saying he's making progress. Like, he was questionable the first game, and he didn't have surgery. So, like, what are we... Like, are we seeing Max Strus again? Like, there's a lot... Dean Wade was out for personal reasons, because I believe he had a child, but then he...
And then he had knee soreness,
And then he... Right. Like, he's been off since the Travis Kelce game. Like, I don't even know if you can sell the bobblehead online anymore. Like, that was so long ago.
You probably can.
You probably can.
You absolutely probably can. I will say this, just the only thing about the coaches and injury reports, if anyone is like ever expecting a coach to give useful information about injuries, I'm just saying just don't. Like, I say that with all due respect to NBA head coaches and to JB Bickerstaff, who oftentimes will give you like good answers. He answered your questions, I mean, very frankly, the other day about gambling, and
maybe too frankly. That's another topic for discussion.
Okay, no. I will give you a rant off air, Jackson, that because if I get started on the air, we'll be here for like much too longer, and we don't need to be. I want to ask you one last Cavs Wolves thing before we go. Who'd be the role guy you'd pick from either team if you're going to do like a role player draft? Who would be like your role? Okay, that's your number between both teams. You're just like that's your role guy. In all seriousness, like,
no.
Be your role
so
guy
Naz Reid. I think that's
I think it'd be him, or I think I would go Jaden McDaniels, but I like the Naz Reid pick. I think it would like Jaden just being like the big wing who shoots and can cut and defend really well would be where I would go.
Yeah, I mean, you just need guys who can give you something on both ends of the floor and shoot and play like the 4. That seems like something that you would really like. The Cavs have. Yeah, and I think he would just fit so well with this team, because one of the things that we saw when his team was fully healthy is kind of how Max Strus gives them a lot more versatility to run different lineups. And if you threw in somebody like Naz Reid into this group, it'd be like you could run a whole lot more lineups than you can now. So I think it's like it was a no-brainer. It wasn't a no-brainer because Sam was on the board, but other than that.
Yeah, you're like Sam Merrill, obviously like part of the core 4. Jared Allen's being traded, so you're replacing him with Sam Merrill.
Right. I thought that was where things went wrong. Zero shot attempts after scoring 10 points in the second quarter. 0 shot attempps from then on out.
I would like to go. Yeah, I'm not gonna subject myself to rewatching this game, but I might go back and rewatch some clips just to see like what did they do something to take Merrill out of the game, and did that have an effect? I'm generally like wondering that now after the fact, and would maybe like to go back and reconsider that, because he had 0 shots, as you said, and that's not great, Bob. We're gonna end there though. This has been Locked On Cavs for Saturday, March 23rd. Thanks to Jake Stevens. Jackson, thanks so much for stepping in for Evan. I appreciate you for talking about this weird game and weird Cavs stuff with me, my friend.
No problem. Always happy to jump on.
Back on Monday. Cavs Heat. Oh boy, we'll see what that looks like come Monday morning. Cavs in South Beach on Sunday. We'll have it all here covered for you on Locked On Cavs. Enjoy your weekend.